if you're an Amazon employee and you get a Jeff email, the entire organization stops. Like something is wrong. It could just be a forward from a customer complaint or a forward from someone else with no comment. It's just a forward and everyone knows what to do. Like we're going to dissect this. We're going to explain how this happened and you'll have the report on your desk by like 5 p.m. and we're going to have a meeting about it if we need to. This ain't that whatsoever.
Mizrahi, head of operations and everything at Levels. Ben Grynol, head of growth. And we're talking about what it's like to work with Levels. I think sometimes there are these thoughts around the CEO of a company or the co-founder, and there can be intimidation around not knowing what it's like to work with somebody, even if you've been in the organization for a while, or when you start with a new company or you're a new partner, you're a new investor, somebody on the cap table. It's just like you don't know somebody's work style. So the point of us recording this is to be like, hey, hopefully we can paint a picture so other people can get that lens. We took this guide from Threads, like screenshotted it, and came up with a few takeaways. The first one is assume asks are low priority. What's been like your experience with this?
Yeah. Knowing that the tasks are low priority up front has helped me a ton. Examples, I can think back to when we were using email. I would get these emails with just like spurs of thoughts, ideas, multiple times a day. And so if I check my email at the end of the day, there'd be like 5 or 6 ideas. A lot of those I ended up tagging and coming back to weeks later, months later, when a project was forming that I remember it was relevant to. Had I chased those down in the moment, one, I don't think they would have been very actionable because they're just ideas. And two, like I would have spent all my time running around trying to figure out what to do with these tasks that are coming my way. And it would have created a very frenetic, uncalm work environment. And so there's, I think, 2 categories of this, which is maybe helpful context. One, there's ideas, thoughts, which folks across the team send. The other is specific asks or tasks that may or may not be time sensitive. The general assumption is that unless someone specifies that it is time sensitive, it's not, and it can get done next week, next month, or next year. I don't care. Just like make sure it's somewhere. And so that's been the experience with it. And sometimes things have passed and gone 6 months and like our priorities have shifted and the task gets moved up or it gets dropped. But just knowing that we're tracking it and aware of it and knowing upfront that these aren't things that you have to drop everything and go figure out has been super helpful.
It is counterintuitive for people to think like I should stop doing everything I'm doing and A, respond to this quickly, and B, act upon it really quickly. And the irony is that if you do both A and B, it's actually a failure because it means that we are not acting with asynchronous communication. We're being reactive to things that are unplanned as far as unplanned work. And so it's funny because we really need to drive home across the team and across the organization that if something is a priority, like somebody will say, hey, this is a fire drill, which you've said before, but hey, this is a fire drill. This is a priority. So I think the main takeaway is assume that asks are low priority unless this is an urgent priority, or if it has some sense of a timeline associated with it, if you could explore this by date X. Right? It might be 2 weeks out. If you can explore this by date X and follow up with a recommendation, that is the way that it's good to know that nobody should ever feel a sense to react to things or to respond immediately to them unless you got it.
And the opposite is not uncommon. So if you look at companies like Amazon, I had experiences at Uber where if you're an Amazon employee and you get a Jeff email, the entire organization stops. Like something is wrong. It could just be a forward from a customer complaint or a forward from someone else with no comment. It's just a forward and everyone knows what to do. Like we're going to dissect this. We're going to explain how this happened and you'll have the report on your desk by like 5 p.m. and we're going to have a meeting about it if we need to. This ain't that whatsoever. And so just having that peace of mind to like work calmly and not have priority bombs falling left and right changes the way work is done.
Exactly. And still work fast. Like the idea is to work fast. It's to work fast on the things you're working on, not on the reactive things. Why does our team like long, thorough communication? What's the reason for that?
Yeah, I think it's consistent with our documentation culture. Things have been asked and answered before. There's history and context that doesn't get lost when it can be searched and referenced. And it turns out we actually end up using that quite a bit. It's not uncommon to have an email thread resurface months later with someone we were talking to, or an idea that we had thrown around and that kind of died on the vine. It's helpful to be able to pull those things up and search for them. And so we like paper trails. We definitely generally lean into them. And it creates a good record of the work that's been done, so that anyone that comes along has clarity on the situation. There's nothing lost to tribal knowledge, or you had to be there.
Mm-hmm. And that's getting back to using the right platform for the right thing. So email externally, threads internally, or if something's urgent, it doesn't matter whether you are internal or external. We can't expect that we're always online on email or on threads or whatever platform. So it's finding the right platform at the right time, but paper trails are great for more thorough communication. This one gets back to the email thing, right? Where it's, if you get an email, it means something. I should act on it now. Like, it's exactly what we said, like, we don't do here. This is counterintuitive as well, which is it's okay to push back and disagree. If we say, I don't know if that's a priority, or I know you requested this thing. Here's everything on my plate right now. If you see this new thing as a higher priority, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to push this one out for 3 months and we'll revisit it.
Yeah. What I'd add there is I think there's a sense of autonomy that is truly respected. We are each our own managers. We know what we have to do and we know where our priorities lie. And so being able to make those judgment calls from our own vantage point is appreciated. Another part of this is that the relationships that we have are generally built on pretty solid trust. And so whereas in other environments, folks in leadership roles might expected, or people interacting with folks in leadership roles might kind of default to like a yes culture where anything's possible, whatever you say goes. But it's actually adding value and adding perspective and insight to those kinds of conversations is what makes a leadership team helpful and effective. So it's good to be analytical, thoughtful, to voice opinions, and it doesn't degrade the value of the relationship. You're not threatening the relationship that's been built, that's strong, the trust battery's full. You're free to disagree as you need to without threatening a social interaction that you might be worried about. So this takes practice, and I think getting used to, but is generally a culture that we want to build, and one that I think is accepted and invited in.
Yeah, and when people are on the receiving end of pushback, right? It's like a natural human tendency to immediately take a position of defense. Like, you get very defensive, and it doesn't mean that you have your guard up and you are defensive. It's just that is psychologically what happens in the human brain. And so it's not like, let's revisit this in a week. Remember when we push back about this, I still don't see it as a priority. Like, that is anti-work, and that means that we've just walked around with too much cognitive load. So if something is resolved, it's just great. You're both on the same page, or disagree and commit to it. This has happened a couple times where people laugh about it. People like, man, I've never blind carbon copied somebody and had them added back into the thread on an email. And it's not because of micromanagement. It's more a matter of really having really having a sense of the pulse of the company, what is going on. And the takeaway is that you almost can't communicate too much.
Yeah, this is just a matter of respecting other people's ability to triage their own information and to process it effectively. And so don't think that you're doing someone a favor by keeping them off of something. Generally speaking, more transparency is better. The information can be referenced by more people in the future. And in all the times I've asked, hey, do you want to be included in this or should I drop you? It's generally just been a yes, include me. It can't hurt. It's a one keystroke to archive if I don't need to see it. So there's that piece of it. The other piece that might be jarring to folks internally if they're not expecting it is oftentimes when someone adds the CEO to an email that you're on, it's like, oh, are you calling me out here, or like, why does this need that much exposure? And just kind of do away with those feelings. That's not the intent behind people CCing one another, unless it's very like obvious that it's like getting added in later. But that generally doesn't happen. That's not our culture or the way that we run things. So generally, folks can be included on threads. It's not a matter of outing them or exposing some problem.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a good point. It's also like contextual, right? So let's use Jesse, for example. He's taking on these mission patches, which is a project we have going on right now. And I only state that because this video will get dated by assuming that it's not ongoing. But as of October 6th, 2021, Jesse is taking on this mission patches project. And if he and I are communicating and I CC'd Sam or Josh in on those comms, maybe the external optics would be like, oh, Ben is CCing other members of leadership because it's not going in the right direction. But it might just be, and this, like Jesse would understand this and people within the company would understand, oh, the reason he's doing that is because he doesn't want to like relay the message to Josh and Sam later of like the status update of mission patches. It's more just like, hey guys, here's everything Jesse's working on. And it's almost like the opposite. It's like accolades of, hey, look at all the great things Jesse's doing. It's counterintuitive because it's, to your point, if somebody from a leadership position or who is a co-founder in a company gets CC'd, it's like, is this thing going south? Like if you are on the receiving end of it, is this going south? Like why were they brought in? The only other time that people would be brought in is bring me in if there is a blocker, if something's roadblocked and it needs unblocking, and that might happen through a separate DM with the 2 or 3 parties involved in this to say, hey, here's the scenario. And that's not a bad thing. It's just everybody expects it.
Yeah. The piece about calling in help when it's needed to make decisions is important. And part of the expectations of most leaders at the company, right? Like our job as leaders is to make decisions and unblock situations so that work can get done and we can keep moving forward. And so that's not a bad thing. It's normal for folks to have their own opinions. It's normal for folks to disagree on the best way forward, but then there is a decision maker. We make the decision and we move forward and we kind of disagree and commit and that whole piece of it. But that's expected. And that's how that would work, is just pulling someone in to make the decision when it's clear that there's an impasse. It's accountability, closing the loop. We love closing the loop. A day later, a month later, whatever it is, be consistent in kind of just following up and not feeling bad about like you're adding communication or following up. Just when a project hits a milestone or needs an update or it is done, mention it, and it goes such a long way. It creates peace of mind, not just on that specific task, but on all outstanding tasks that we're not people who drop things. Like things won't get lost because we have this culture of we follow up and we close the loop when it happens. And so, yeah, that's a great piece of culture, and that I think we've all come to enjoy doing in our work. It feels good sometimes too to just close the loop and know that you're being accountable.
Yeah, and it gets back to that conversation about like you can never communicate too much. We close the loop internally. It can be related, as you said, to a project, to an initiative, to whatever it might be. But where it actually has a ton of value, and we've seen it, is closing the loop with, let's just say, investors, external parties. We say, thank you for the intro. Great. That in most cases is the end of the conversation. But we set these reminders that are like 3 weeks or a month later, so that by the time we've actually met with that person, we can go, hey, just wanted to close the loop and let you know that Billy and Miz and I talked. And it was a great conversation. We talked about bullet 1, 2, and 3. Really appreciate it. Was super helpful. And we've done that so many times with especially people in our cap table that we hear back. They're like, oh, like your process for always making us feel comfortable and feel like we can really trust you. It's really built up that trust battery. We all make the entire levels team just look better by continuing to build that trust. And so that is something that is highly valued too. It's not just closing the loop with our team, it's closing the loop across the gamut of people that we interact with on a daily basis. And that is really, I mean, that's inherent to our cultural values right there.
Yeah. And again, closed loops, it's part of the product and it's part of the team ethos. This exists in so many places. There's that example where someone has set up an intro. We do this on support when someone reaches in about a problem and they respond, and most support teams will just kind of close it there. We actually have a follow-up system that checks in 2 weeks later to say, hey, is this still a problem or did we fix it? We've done this with product feedback where someone might mention something in passing to Mike DiDonato, who's doing like a user research call. And then we implement that feature a month later, and he can circle back and say, hey, we implemented this feature, update your app, you'll find it. It's really personal, creates trust, and it's just part of the feeling, part of the way that we work. And it is great to work with people that do that as well. It just kind of builds a really healthy environment.